Yo, America, planet Earth, what's good? This is your boy Codell, and welcome back to another episode of Father's Gospel Podcast. Today, I'm very excited. I've got probably my most phenomenal guest. I always say that, but they just keep getting better and better. So today, I got Stephen Baskerville. Is it Baskerville or Baskerville?
Baskerville.
Baskerville. Okay, just want to make sure I'm saying that correctly. And Dr. Steven has written the book and many other books, but we're going over this book today, Taken into Custody. Oops, absolutely phenomenal book. Dr. Steven is an expert on basically all the shenanigans that are going on with marriage and fatherhood and the family court. So, Dr. Steven, welcome to the show and thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here.
Yes, yes. So excited to have you here. So, can you just go ahead and give the people a little bit of, let them know a little bit about you and your background and why you're kind of doing what you're doing?
Okay, well, I'm a semi-retired professor of political science and history, and I got into this. That was my first book on this topic: marriage, family, divorce, fatherhood, custody, and so forth. And I got into it because I realized that there were an awful lot of no one had really studied it from the political standpoint. Nobody had looked at the politics of the family courts, divorce courts, and so forth. There were an awful lot of cliches, ugly divorce, nasty custody battle, the
Right,
usual stuff. I'd heard them all, but then when I realized what was really going on, I realized that there was much more involved. There was a huge political background. There's a complicated and quite corrupt politics behind the chaos and the injustices of the family court. And it is injustices. It's not just nasty or ugly or gratuitously unpleasant. It's these courts are corrupt. There's no doubt about it. And the entire
100%. Go
and
ahead.
the entire divorce machinery, the entire divorce system is contrary to basic principles of good government and sound legal principles. So I thought the world needed to know about this. And even though the book was published almost 20 years ago, unfortunately, it's sad to say, um, nothing has changed.
Yeah, yeah.
If anything,
Well,
it's gotten worse.
it's interesting because I don't know if you know who Robert Garza is, but he's this gentleman out of Texas, and he's been making phenomenal headways with getting legislation passed, not just in Texas, but a couple other states now. And I'm actually working with him here in Washington to make sure that parental rights are protected in the family courts and they start following the Constitution. But he always says that right now, what's going on with family courts and divorce courts, this is basically the civil rights issue of our era. And yeah, I agree with that. And that's why, I mean, I was just so drawn into your book. And for me personally, this has been a very personal issue. I'm currently in a almost 8 year custody battle for my son, and so I've just ever since it started, it's sent me down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out why everything's going on and what I can do to help solve these issues because I don't want to pass this system on to my son or any of the next generation of kids. And for me, that's what I've realized what this is really about is trying to figure out how to clean this up. So yeah, thank you. Okay. So man, 20, I mean, yeah, this book's been around a while. Um, is there so what is there any personal experiences in your life that drew you into pursuing, this type of knowledge and addressing these issues? Or was it just an issue that you came across and you're like, wow, the world needs to know about this?
Well, it was both. I did find myself confronted with a unilateral divorce, a unilateral involuntary divorce, and I was summoned to court one day. I had no idea what was going on until I received a summons to court, and in just a few minutes, my eyes were just opened. I knew immediately that I was in the middle of a very, very corrupt and rigged proceeding, and that there was the court that I was summoned to was not interested in dispensing justice in any form. It was interested in laying out a preformed, pre-decided um, process, judgment that
Right.
had nothing to do with justice.
Now, was it just strictly a divorce, or was there kids involved with your situation as well?
Yes, there were kids involved. The nastiest ones, the most evil, if you like, uh, proceedings always involve children. Yeah,
Right.
that's the most crooked and cruel, really, part of the whole divorce industry, is the way that they adjudicate or pretend to adjudicate child custody.
So this became a very personal thing for this really did affect you on a very heavy level. So, yeah, man, well, hopefully, hopefully everything you went through with that, hopefully you and your children, hopefully you guys have a great relationship now. But, yeah, okay. So, man, that let me ask you this. So, we've got here. Okay, let me pull it up real quick because I got my questions laid out. So, in the introduction of the book, you talk about the crisis of fatherhood and marriage, and you frame the crisis of fatherhood and marriage as a profound societal issue tied to systematic abuses. So, could you elaborate on what initially? Well, we already went over that. Okay, so obviously you had your personal issue. Um, let me skip to this one. So, judicial kidnapping. Th this chapter discusses what you term as judicial kidnapping in family courts. So, how do you define this concept, and what historical precedents or legal cases do you draw upon to illustrate its prevalence?
Okay, well, first of all, I might just briefly answer the question that you started to ask because
Yes, please.
it actually is important. When I first got involved in this in the late 1990s, there was already controversy developing over fatherhood. The Clinton
Okay.
administration, Al Gore, Vice President Al Gore, was already starting an initiative in the Clinton administration over fatherhood. And it was already being recognized that fatherhood was a crisis, that millions of children were growing up without fathers. This had already been known in welfare families, low income minority families on welfare. This had been known since back in the 60s. But increasingly, it was invading, it was spreading to middle class white families and other middle class families especially in the 90s. And by the late 90s, it was out of control already. And liberals like the Clinton administration and conservatives like the Bush administration were already calling attention to this. The Clinton started this fatherhood initiative. Bush relabeled it as a healthy marriage initiative. And so that they couldn't escape that this was a crisis anymore. But neither of them did anything substantive to ameliorate it in the least. It was mostly a matter of happy talk, nice
Right.
sounding cliches about and platitudes about the importance of fathers. And there
Paying
was
their
a lot,
lip service. Yeah,
right, a
yeah.
lot of psychotherapy. So counseling fathers to be better fathers, as if there was something wrong with the fathers themselves. Um, and so all of these cliches were coming out, and really it just amounted to, as I said, psychotherapy, which eventually became feminist psychotherapy. And then it eventually, the other factor that involved was collecting child support. That's all it was about,
Yep,
because the
yep.
government makes a lot of money on child support. So, subjecting innocent, legally innocent fathers to all this therapy and to confiscation in the form of child support or losing their homes or so forth. This is all it amounted to. It was quite clear that the Clinton and Bush administrations were not serious, and current administrations like Santorum not Santorum, uh, the Florida governor, Rick
Uh,
DeSantis.
yes, yes.
DeSantis. He's resurrected these, and it's the same old nonsense. It's the same runaround. So anytime you hear about government fatherhood programs or marriage programs, you know that it's fraudulent.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
Now, when you say well, this, so I there was nothing in any of these programs about the corruption of the family courts, the fact that fathers were had their children confiscated. In fact, if anything, there were a number of scholars on the government payroll, like David Blankenhorn and David Popenow, had written books blaming the fathers for abandoning their children. who had fathers who had done no such thing, fathers who had been taken into court voluntarily, involuntarily, losing their children through
Well,
literally
Steven,
no fault.
not sorry to interrupt, but no, what you say is absolutely 100% on point because one of the things that I learned when I got caught up in this system, the family courts, all this stuff, is that most dads, just like me, who aren't in their children's lives, the vast majority of them want to be. It's just there's so much obstruction put in place by the courts. And so, I mean, we're constantly trying to figure out how to make our way through this maze of endless financial servitude and freaking mental and spiritual warfare. It's absolutely insane, but please go on.
Well, yeah, there was nothing. So this is when I realized that it wasn't fathers abandoning their children. Nowadays, they've dropped that lie. They don't even pretend that anymore. But in the 90s, this was the big lie. Fathers were abandoning their children. Not a shred of evidence was ever shown. I called them on this. I called them out. I published articles showing that there's not a shred of evidence that fathers were abandoning their children. I mean, you can find examples of anything, but it's not the cause of the problem. It's not a major contributor to the problem. And just a couple of days ago, Tucker Carlson actually did rehash the same canard. He talked about he doesn't respect men who abandon their children. So this was complete nonsense. And that's when we can move to the first chapter, which was what I realized it was, which is judicial kidnapping. The courts were summoning innocent, legally unimpeachable citizens, fathers mostly, sometimes mothers, and literally confiscating their children. And so this is what it was. They seized. This is always the first step in a divorce. It's always the first because nothing else kicks in. The first thing they do in a divorce is they summon the father and they legally abrogate his custody. That is to say, for all practical purposes, his right to raise his children, his parental rights.
Right.
They say it's not technically it's not abrogation of parental rights. The children are still your children, but you have no right to make any decisions about them or supervise their upbringing or anything, except during uh, times when the court authorizes you, and insofar as the court authorizes you to do so.
Yeah.
So you're hauled into court. Your rights are effectively abrogated. Everything about your relationship with your children is micromanaged by the court. Everything about your private life is micromanaged by the court. Where you're allowed to live, how much have to pay in child support, or sometimes how much you have to pay in attorney's fees. They control all of these things. They confiscate your house. They demand that you sell your house. They confiscate your income. They raid your bank account. And if they assess a kind of miniature personal criminal code around you. And
Yeah.
if you don't obey the criminal code, or if you can't obey the criminal code, you can be subject to immediate summary incarceration without trial.
Steven, you're
Uh,
describing my life. I mean, I just paid off because, and this was literally their fault. I gave them the job that I was working at the time. They didn't connect it correctly. I didn't realize because of that they weren't pulling child support out. Next thing I know, I get a letter in the mail. We're going to throw you in jail. We're going to take away your license. If you don't do that, then all of a sudden they're stripping money out of my my check, and it was their fault the whole time. So, yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. Please go on.
well, this is a nightmare. I'm describing the lives of millions, tens of millions of men
Right.
today, and partly you could say in one sense it's our fault, partly because the middle class, affluent white men, we ignored this for decades when it was being low income men on welfare is where it all started. It started with low income men on welfare. And they've been the subject to this since the beginning, since the 60s at least.
Right.
And it was with the no fault divorce in the 70s really, that this began to spread to middle income, affluent fathers. The welfare machinery was extended, and by the welfare machinery I mean um, the child support enforcement, that's part of it, but also things like child abuse accusations and domestic violence accusations. These are all originated, the machinery, the enforcement machinery for these accusations began under the welfare system. and they were spread out to the middle class in the primarily in the 90s, really 80s and 90s, uh, and more men getting themselves into this. Bill Clinton pretended to reform the welfare system in 1996, and the Congress went along with him. But in fact, he made it worse because what it did was he didn't reduce the welfare rolls significantly, and in any case, Obama filled them back up. What he did do was he increased child support enforcement, and he turned the social workers, most of whom are feminists,
Yep.
into plainclothes police. He gave them police powers, plainclothes police powers, police powers to enforce drum, mostly almost entirely trumped up accusations of
Right.
of child abuse, domestic violence, and non-payment of child support. So the feminine it created basically a feminist gendarmerie, a feminist police force of social workers backed by the court, well, backed by the regular police to some extent on the courts, who were not controlled by like uniformed policemen are, by due process of law and by certain constraints to protect the rights of the accused. They can do more or less what they want,
Yeah,
and
they're
so
pit
this,
bulls.
yeah,
My like for example, my case, the the opposing party was given a free attorney for like 4 years. This, and I don't care if this sounds rude. This lady was a white feminist, fat man hating lesbian who would wear masks, freaking try to enforce all this COVID stuff and all this other insanity on top of me. And I mean, they were successful with it. Like I'm still untangling it. So yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. But sorry to interrupt. Please go on. It's just everything you're saying. You're talking about my life. So please go on.
well, you raise an important point there, and that the whole system is shot through with not only pecuniary interests but also ideology, both together. The lawyers, the judges, the social workers, the psychotherapists are all making money. That's part of it. But their bureaucratic, their pecuniary interest is reinforced by ideology in many cases. The whole system is shot through with feminist social workers, feminist lawyers, feminist attorneys, feminist psychotherapists. But even the lawyers or judges who want to do the right thing, and there may be a few left, I don't know. Um, those who, male ones or female ones perhaps, who want to do the right thing and rule justly, they can't do it. Even they are, to a large extent, prisoners of the system. If they're not ideologues, they themselves are prisoners of the system. And if they try to rule justly, they will be disbarred or they will be removed from the bench or from the psychotherapy industry. So that the bar associations control all of this. The feminist bar associations really began it. They're the ones that brought in no fault divorce. Before that, they're the ones that brought in the welfare state. So all the way from the beginning, from the early 20th century, feminist ideologues, first socialist ideologues, but increasingly feminist ideologues, have been behind this and have staffed it, have run the system, and driven out the decent lawyers and judges and therapists and so forth. And they've taken control. So the pecuniary, the huge amounts of money that are being stolen from families and go into the pockets of the lawyers and the judges. This is part of it, but it's also reinforced by the ideology. They fit together and they reinforce each other, and it forms like a block that's just very difficult
Well,
to
you're talking
penetrate.
about these, these groups and institutions, organizations. This is why I'm always telling people and this is what I'm trying to do. And this is why I'm, connecting with people like you and all these other individuals around the country. We have to become just as well organized and efficient as the opposing side to be able to get in there and start, I guess, in a way, taking over these institutions and cleaning them out because you're exactly right what you were saying a few moments ago about, the handful of, judges or attorneys or whoever that may be good, but they are literally surrounded by all these swamp creatures that are just more than happy to benefit off the current status quo, with Title 40 and everything else. But yeah, please continue on.
Well, yeah, no, you may notice in that book 20 years ago, I quoted a couple of judges who, waited until they were retired. They corroborated everything I said,
Right.
but they did so after they retired from the
Yep.
bench. And,
Right.
there was another judge that not only, corroborated it, but he gloated about it. He gloated and said he was the head of the Matrimonial Lawyers Association, and he was gloating about the power that they have, and saying that their power was unlimited. So, they operate outside the common law, they operate outside the Constitution. Um, they are in the one chapter, chapter 2, I think it is. I go down through the Bill of Rights and I point by point and other constitutional protections. And I show how every single one almost is violated on a daily basis by the family courts. When we're talking here about due process of law, cruel and unusual punishment, speedy trial, um, uh, ex post facto laws, double jeopardy, um, uh, uh, the contract clause, habeas corpus.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you name it. There's no constitutional protection
You're
that
you're
isn't
saying
violated.
everything my brother Kyle says, and yeah, I mean, you're bringing it all up. Yeah, it's yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this. So, you've explored the intersection of divorce laws, constitutional. What specific constitutional violations do you argue occur in modern divorce courts and family courts, and how have they evolved over time?
Well, like I say, I listed them, but just briefly, things like the Fourth Amendment, which protects privacy against unreasonable searches and seizures. I mean, they take your children. What could be more invasive than that?
Right.
They invade they seize your bank account. They force you to sell your home. They micromanage your life. What could be more more unreasonable searches and seizures? There's the Fifth Amendment, due process of law protections. There's the Eighth Amendment, the cruel and unusual punishment. They publish your name in the newspaper if you don't pay child support, or or if you can't pay child support to the amount that they say. Ex post facto laws that are retroactively, go into force retroactively, which are prohibited by the Constitution. Acts of attainder, which are legislative declarations of guilt, where the Congress or the state legislature passes a law saying that an individual is guilty of a crime. This happened in the Elizabeth Morgan case, and it's happened in many other cases. The contract clause should protect the marriage contract, but the courts just rip up the marriage contract. Habeas corpus. If you're jailed or detained, you're supposed to know the charges against you, and yet you can be jailed without any charges against you, and without ever knowing what they are. Double jeopardy. You can be tried once in one court. You can have and then it can go to another court, and they can try you all over again. Um, it's just you can't make this
It's
stuff
just
up. It's
I know. Yeah, it's you're literally making my brain hurt, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just like you're bullet pointing everything, and I love this because this is what the people need to hear. And it's like I really I keep harping on dads about this. It's like one of my biggest complaints, not just with dads, but even the whole liberal conservative thing is so I'm always telling dads, I'm like, we're only going to be able to fix this if we actually are willing to get in the game and start fighting back. Because one of the biggest issues I notice with dads, and this is not me hating, is just, and I understand why we get so beat down by the system that a lot of us we end up kind of just wanting to curl up in a ball, go hide in a corner, and hope that the system eventually treats us with a little bit of dignity and respect. But what dads have to get through their brain is the system is not set up to treat us with dignity and respect. The system is designed to not just destroy us, destroy our families as a whole. So the only choice we have is to gain the type of knowledge that you have, to get organized and truly start representing not just ourselves but our children and just each other as a whole. So yeah, no, this
That's
is
right.
incredible stuff. So please go on.
No, you're exactly right. The system is designed to Get you first of all, the first thing they do is get control of your children, and then they use the children as the leverage, as the excuse to plunder you for everything you have and criminalize you. So, they separate the first thing the divorce court does is separate the father from the children because without that, nothing else kicks in. Nothing else. Nobody has any work. There's no business for the courts or their entourage of hangers-on until the father is separated from the children. They might separate the mother also, but usually the father is first. So they separate the children from the father. They use the children as an excuse and leverage to plunder, to loot the father, and to criminalize the father, and to throw him out of his home and criminalize him, turn him incarcerated without trial, and then eventually, when they get tired of paying for your incarceration, they turn you out on the street, where you join the 85% of the homeless who are men. And this is the reason. And if you go to a men's shelter and ask them why there are how many of those men in the men's shelter have been through divorce, it'll be 100%. It'll be
Yeah.
virtually 100%.
Well,
Um,
what's crazy too is speaking of men's shelters, all that stuff. Like, I just out of curiosity, this was months back. I was like, you know what? I want to see how many charity programs. I'm going to do a comparison. How many charity programs are there for cats and dogs versus women and little girls and versus men and boys? Cats and dogs beat out everybody. Like, not even the moms and the little girls could keep up with them. But there was still a couple thousand programs around the whole entire country that were specifically focused on girls and women, right? But there was not one program that was specifically only focused on the issues that men and boys are facing. Not one. There was programs that were kind of dealing with the issues, but they were also dealing with issues that women are dealing with. And those type of programs, they typically tend to focus on the female aspect of things. So yeah.
That's a very important point. I want to pick up on that for a moment because
Okay,
it's actually
please.
even worse than that. Because, as I said, all of this originated in the welfare system, and when you think about it, men don't derive any benefit from the welfare system. I mean, the welfare system it doesn't benefit men, it doesn't benefit children, it doesn't benefit families, it doesn't even benefit married women until
No, it
they.
doesn't.
It
Yeah.
benefits the only people that benefit from the welfare system are unmarried women. And one of the places where I see some hope these days is is that young, low income minority men are coming to realize this.
Yes, they
We
are.
often say, black men in particular are coming to realize this because we often say, when we're discussing racial issues, or even conservatives when they discuss racial issues, or liberals when they discuss racial issues, they say, "Well, look at all these social programs we've given to blacks." We and yet they go out and they commit crime. They're criminals. Tucker Carlson says this too. They're all criminals. They all go out and loot and murder and rape. And all
Right.
these social programs we've well, those social programs don't benefit black men.
Right.
They don't benefit. Not in the least. They destroy black men.
Right.
They're the
Right.
ones because they destroy their homes. They destroy their fathers, and these young black men and other men nowadays grow up in fatherless homes, and a large percentage of them do become criminals. So
Well,
it's not that they're
Sean,
becoming. Yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry. So
I was
okay.
just gonna say,
So this is for me. This is a very interesting thing. What you're talking about right now. Okay, because for me, it's very personal. Because my son. So my son is biracial. He's half black, half white. And so I want to see, like, when I'm connecting all the big dots, I'm like, they are constantly trying to keep a wedge between black and white people, and especially a divide between white males and black males, because
yes.
we're going to lead the communities. We're the ones that lead the communities. And I really I'm so happy, like what you're talking about with and it's not just black men, but it's just men in general. But yes, black men are starting to wake up in droves and realize that they have been from low income people. So you're inevitably going to have to move up and up and up. And it's just like people just I don't mean to sound rude, but people just do not do a good job of looking long term at things and connecting the bigger dots. But please go on, Miss. Yeah.
No, you make a very good point there. That's exactly right. And black men are waking up to this. In the last election, they voted much higher for Donald Trump on Republicans than they ever did before. And that's very important because what it shows, conservatives in particular are always going on about, race, and because they feel comfortable dealing with race and they don't feel comfortable dealing with sex. So they go on about these racial problems. But in the last election, we saw, the black men are, and the conservatives, yes, they go on about white males. White males are so oppressed. Well, I understand that, the woke ideology does target white males, but really
Right.
black males have suffered much more over the decades than the white males. And you're right, the black male is, as I often say, the canary in the mine shaft.
Right,
Um,
right.
what happens
Well,
to the
and
black
with
male
white
will happen
males,
to all
we've
of us.
become the new convenient target. Right now, we become that target that they need to target to dismantle the system, and that's why they're gunning for us right now. But that's how, that's what I always tell people. And sorry to interrupt. That's what I always tell people. When you look at history, when they target people, it's not necessarily based on race. It's always based on some type of need. Like with slavery is like, anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off track. Please go on.
No, no, I'm just making the point that when black men vote for Trump and black women vote for Kamala Harris, what that really shows is that sex. Well, it means that black men see their interests as different than those of black women, and
Right,
what that means is that sex has overcome race as the central fault line in American politics. So you
right,
can't going on about Black Lives Matter, which by the way is a feminist organization. It was started by black feminists, not
right,
not black men. So when you go in on this, conservatives love to dwell on race and woke ideology, but in my view, and this is the theme of my latest book, is that sex is far more important. Sex or gender, if you prefer, are the real. That's really the newest and the most destructive ideology, and the main fault line in American politics. Race has been around for a long time, but really the degradation of the African American community, which is real and it's continuing. It's still going on, but it's not a problem of race. It's a problem of sex. It's a problem of the black family, the destruction of
right,
the black family. So they're making what really is a sexual problem, a sexual division, look like a racial one. And like you say, they're dividing black men and black.
yeah, yeah, and you
Sorry, black men and white men, black men and white
right,
men.
right, right, yeah,
That's what I
no,
messed up.
yeah, and again, man, for me, and for my son, because there's been things that have happened in case. I remember when my case first moved up here in Washington. The attorney on the opposing side kept using the fact that I don't support Black Lives Matter and I'm a Trump supporter and that I'm against COVID and all this stuff as reasons for as reasons that I'm a white supremacist and I shouldn't be around my son. And then also on the flip side, they're planting these poisonous seeds in my son's head already, telling him and his mom's unfortunately encouraging this and going along with it, telling him that he'll never be able to achieve anything in America without help from the government because he's considered black. And this, it just pisses me off on all levels because they're literally just planting these seeds of poison on everybody. And my goal with my son is I'm trying to do everything in my power. Hopefully I'm successful to make sure that he's not brainwashed and that he's not obsessed with. I don't want him to base his identity on his skin tone, so I don't want him feeling like he has to choose between being black, between being white, between being mixed. I want him to base his identity on his character, and then also, I wanna let him know, both sides of your family have in people that have done incredible things, and then both sides of your family also got knuckleheads, and it's just so I'm just that's kinda what I'm hoping to do with my son, and hopefully that can keep him from basically being manipulated and brainwashed by this whole entire system, because what they're doing by planting those seeds is they're telling him that he's weak and anyways, but yeah,
Well,
so
that's very true, and it's very important that you're doing that because this victimhood mentality is very, very debilitating. It's not just unfair to the rest of society. It's emasculating. It's something. I mean, there's nothing more because what it leads to is self pity, And self-pity is one of the most destructive, self-destructive emotions in politics. In fact, could I go back to a point that you raised earlier, and then
Please.
we dropped it, and that was you said a lot of men are so overwhelmed by the system, they're so beaten down. You said that they just want to withdraw, they want to pull out of it, they want to just pray that they want us to be left alone. Uh,
Right.
and my response to that is, I understand it, because of course it makes sense, but this can get worse before it gets
Yep.
better. Not only is the system designed to destroy you, the feminists are constantly looking for new ways to destroy, as I say, to criminalize men. I mean,
Yeah.
when you can be criminalized for looking at somebody um, in the wrong way, or for mansplaining, or all of these things. I mean, these are typically things that are traditionally things that are free. There's an old saying in the English common law: a cat can look at a king. You can't regulate what somebody looks at, but that's what they're trying to do, and they're constantly devising new ways to criminalize. So withdrawing into your own little world and hoping they leave you alone, that's no defense. They won't leave. As Trotsky said, you might not be interested in the feminist revolution, or paraphrasing Trotsky, but the feminist revolution is interested in you, and it's not going to leave you alone as long as you're a free man.
Well, to me, that's the same mistake that conservatives have been making for the last several decades. Is that they kind of just wanted they allowed the liberals to take over media, entertainment, everything, and they really didn't fight back. And now all of a sudden, it kind of took like Trump to come along and almost like teach conservatives, kind of shake them a little bit, and be like, "Yo, you guys got to fight." And honestly, I still think overall conservatives are like I still think they're pretty bad at fighting back, to be completely honest, like, but yeah,
Well,
so
that again is my that again is my theme of my most recent book. It's called "Who Lost America," and basically the conservatives lost America,
I agree.
because I've even got some quotes in there. They're starting to admit it. They're starting to admit that they'd lose all of their battles, every single one. They don't win anything anymore,
Right,
and especially if the issue is family and sexuality, they're even more likely to lose it. So, this is not just something that affects men. It spreads out. You can't quarantine injustice. You can't quarantine oppression. As Martin Luther King said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
right,
And
right,
Frederick Douglass, before that, Frederick Douglass said, the white man's liberty is marked for the same grave as the black man's. And we can say that everybody's liberty, if they can destroy black men, they can destroy white men, and if they can destroy white men, they can destroy white women. And there are
right.
women who fall afoul of this too, who lose their children
Well,
also.
and what women don't get is they're actually the ones that are kinda they're the main pieces that are used to destroy the whole
Yeah,
entire family, you know, and
exactly.
then what the good women, and I am starting to see good women wake up to this on social media because 'cause I'm starting to see more and more women speak about this. But good women are gonna have to do the same thing that we're talking about with more men needing to step up. They're gonna have to speak up more about these issues, and they're gonna have to start policing their own, because that's the only way you're gonna get these crazy females to pipe down a little bit. And then, like, with the conservative movement, conservatives are gonna have to realize that conservatives have been infiltrated the ideology. A lot of conservatives, men and women, they actually have a lot of very feminist point of views and mind state that they don't even realize. And it's just basically we got to do a lot of detoxing.
Well, there you're touching on something, yeah, really interesting, really important, that I'm and other people are writing about this now and talking about it. And that is that this withdrawal of men into this so-called marriage strike. One of the things that another reason that incentive women have to wake up and start um, uh, making noise about this is that they're complaining all the time that they don't have men to marry. There's no men
Right.
to marry. Where are all the
Thank you.
men?
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you for saying that. Please go on.
And the men are not marrying, and the men are not married. They're not starting families. They're not marrying. Some of them aren't even refusing to date or to even associate with women
That's me.
altogether.
Yeah.
Helen Smith wrote an excellent book of this in 2012 called The Marriage Strike, the Men on Strike, and others have written about it as well. And I actually take some hope in this marriage strike, not because I want men not to get married and have families. I do want them to do this. I think it's very sad that they're withdrawing this way. I want them marriage and families and children are our great joy if they're
Right.
done correctly. And I don't want to see men as a lifestyle choice withdraw and do without this joy, which every religion and every ethical code I know extols the virtues of married life and family life. But but I do take some consolation from this marriage strike, this marriage boycott, if you like, because I think it is spontaneous. It's not something men are doing out of you know they're
It's
just doing it because
organic.
they it's organic. They know the terms of divorce in the divorce courts and they want no part of it. So they're staying out of it. They're not doing it as a political maneuver. But my argument is that they should do it as a political maneuver. They should do it as because the point of a strike or a boycott is not to do without the goods you're boycotting. The point of it is to get leverage in the market to get the you know to get the terms of the market or the in this case the laws changed. So the marriage strike shouldn't be men's doing without women and children and families indefinitely. It should be men saying explicitly to the world, look, if you want me to get married, if you want families, if you want men to marry, you've got to join us and change these
Right.
laws.
Yep.
The women, the conservatives, everybody who's lamenting. Instead, what they're doing, of course, is as you know, they're scolding the men. They scold and nag the men, and they say, you got
That
to get
doesn't
married,
work
man
anymore
up.
too.
No,
It
of
doesn't
course it
work.
doesn't.
They haven't gotten that in their head yet. Like there's enough of us awake and more of us are waking up every day. You're nagging only not, and obviously not you, Steven, but their nagging only fuels their demise. And
Yeah,
they are and they just don't understand it. The status quo, the whole way the matrix is operated for the last several decades, it's done. It's finished. Things are turning and they're either going to get on board or they're going to get left behind. I don't care either way, but things are changing and yeah, they're done. And like with men, we we've got to I like okay, not everyone needs to be a leader, but we do need more leaders to continue emerging so we can get more organized and just continue to move forward to get this done. And like what you're saying with checking out a marriage, I agree with you. I think we, to a certain extent, it sucks that we have to do this, but I think we have to starve marriage out to a certain extent because it's one of the tools we can use to get it into the system's head that, hey, if you want us to continue to participate in society, then you better get things together. And it sucks, but we got to kind of starve marriage. We got to kind of starve out relationships right now. So please, though, continue
and
on.
that's
Sorry.
And that's what men are doing, and they're doing it in large numbers spontaneously. So it really wouldn't, as you say, it really wouldn't take a large number of leaders to start, interpreting this and saying, look, if you want these men to marry and have children, and you want to do something about the birth rate and the deteriorating relationships of men and women and the destruction of the Western world, Western civilization, just change the divorce laws and men will marry. And, instead you get these influencers like, who's this guy? Scott Galloway and Reeves and Oprah and these others telling women, oh,
Yeah.
it's all men's fault. Just nag and scold them and they'll marry you. And it's just, nagging and scolding never, I think any older
And
woman can tell you that.
why would anyone ever take relationship advice from Oprah? Like, she's financially successful, but yeah, I don't think she's ever been married or anything like that. And then all her weird connections with lots of interesting individuals. But anyways, yeah. So
Yeah, this is
yeah,
madness. So,
it is.
but there is hope. I think, and if you just need a few, we need some high profile men, but it's some, even a sensible I regard Tucker Carlson as a pretty sensible man on most issues. And he has admitted when he has been foolish in the past. He was foolish over the Iraq War, and he's admitted that. And he's a number of other things. He's readily confessed to being wrong. But this marriage thing for him is just a huge blind spot. I look at some of his recent interviews with Matt Walsh and Fuentes and a few other
Matt
people.
Walsh, same issues. I think is
Yeah,
a Matt Walsh. Yeah, I mean all of them. Yeah, it's just it's that, and I don't mean this is a disrespect, but it's that boomer mind state mentality: the happy wife, the happy life, yes dear, no dear, or like all that type of stuff, and it's just been passed on and passed on. But please, yeah, go on.
yeah, and well, it's they're terrified. Anyone in the mainstream conservative movement, mainstream media, mainstream academics are just terrified to deal with this. And you can understand why. The bar associations are very powerful. They can, Tucker Carlson's been thrown out of two big media jobs already.
Right.
I'm sure he knows. He invited me onto his show once,
Mm,
just before he got canned by PBS, so it never happened. But
okay.
he was fired then by public broadcasting.
You should reach
Um,
back out to him if you have his contact info because I like my thing with Tucker is I consider him good for he's good for the normies. And I mean that like he like what you're talking about, he's kind of slow to catching up on things, but then he admits when he's wrong and the general population listens to people like him, and so they're more willing to accept information from people like him, and so, yeah, you should definitely reach back out and try to get back on his show, like, I think it'd be great.
Well, I think he knows what's going on, and I think he knows what this is the third rail of politics. I think he knows he would be canceled once and for all if he did take it in, because he drops little asides during his commentaries. He talk little things he says about, the black family is the real cause of crime, and then he doesn't go on. He doesn't explore it. He doesn't investigate it. He never does a show on it. He just little things like that he says, and then he changes the subject immediately. So I think he would like to talk about it, but I think he knows that would be the end of his career once.
Everyone's always afraid.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so let me ask you this, we've kind of been talking about this, but you delve into the political dimensions of fatherhood. So, could you kind of discuss further how political ideologies and interest groups have historically influenced policies on marriage and family based on your analysis?
Well, yeah, we have in the United States, especially, a very interest group related um, politics. It's very much controlled by interest groups um, and ideologies. And I think in many ways the feminist ideology began in the English speaking world, America, Britain, Australia. And the judiciary has traditionally had more power in the Anglophone world, in Britain, England, especially America, over the years. So, the lawyers, judges, courts, bar associations, um, and then when you got the blending of feminists with bar associations, that was really the axis of power. They were the ones that brought in no fault divorce in 1969. They were drafting no fault divorce laws back in the 1940s,
Yeah.
and they still try to impose no fault divorce on the global South today. They have infiltrated they have very much infiltrated the United Nations and various non-governmental organizations, so-called, plus intergovernmental organizations, the UN, the European Union, um, various international organizations, even if they have nothing to do with social policy, like the World Trade Organization, or the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. All of these are shot through
It's so crazy.
with feminism. You look at what
Right.
most UN functionaries do; they don't deal with world peace,
No.
or global poverty. In fact, they make global poverty worse because they're out there administering global welfare, which destroys families in the global South, and makes poverty worse. So the United Nations is ground zero for feminist ideology nowadays.
Yeah, we
The
got a bunch
so-called
of Karens,
NGOs.
angry Karens running the world right now, and we've got to put a stop to it. So,
Very
all
much
right, well,
so.
let me ask you this. So, in conclusion, if we're trying to end this war, how do you propose to end it? You know, what steps do you think we need to take to really get things back to where they need to be?
I a number of things. I would say, if you're not joining the marriage strike, at least talk about the marriage strike and interpret it. Show people, what we have to what we've lost already because of the marriage strike, but what we have to gain, that good can come out of evil. That the marriage strike is unfortunate and sad for a lot of people's lives, what they're losing, but it can be the also the beginning of something new. I also, strangely enough, one of the institutions that's really fallen down on the job here when it comes to marriage and family are the churches.
Yes,
But
yes, yep.
but
Go on, please.
I still believe the churches have a very, very important role in American history.
I
They're not
agree.
just deeply rooted in American history. In many ways, churches began American history. They got when they got off the boat in Massachusetts. They got off the boat as entire preformed congregations. The entire churches left
Right.
England, came to Massachusetts, and then became entire towns where they created, New England town meetings and participatory democracy. So I think if you want to defeminize society, I think a good place to start would be to defeminize the churches. Go into the
Yes.
churches, demand not just that the pastors have and
Please go
priests
on.
have
Yes, you're just getting
good,
me
sound
excited.
doctrine, but that they
Oh,
apply
hold
the
up.
doctrine.
He froze.
Um, Make sure, pay attention to what the pastor or the priest. You got me?
Steven, you okay. Hold up.
See myself, you're frozen.